Being here this particular evening, and very impressed at the strictness of your professor, I'll tell you. So it is good. It is good to be here with all of you, and an honor to be with all of you as well. Before I preach, what I'd like to do is just to get myself set as much as anyone else. I want to invite us into the spirit of prayer and meditation. Spirit of life, God of many names, whose highest name is always love and unity. Sometimes we face things that are too large to hold alone. And sometimes in those moments, it's fewer words that are better. Sometimes it is the spaces of silence between breaths, those little pauses between the notes of music, where we have the time to find some small inkling of wisdom. It is the space, as we know, inside the small seed that holds all the possibilities for new growth. Sometimes in our own lives, it's enough to say, I am not perfect, and the world is not perfect, so I will do what I can. And sometimes we rely on forgiveness of ourselves and forgiveness of the world, and that's the only way that we begin again in love. So I invite us to take just a few moments together in the sacredness of shared silence, to consider what it is in each of our own lives that we need to see anew, that we need to embrace. May we be the ones to turn towards hope, the hope of that unspoken promise which we cannot say and yet know is the greatest truth of our lives. May we be the ones to make it so. Blessed be. The sermon that I'm going to preach, I preached in my congregation in September, on the 23rd of September, which will be relevant, as you will recognize. Have you ever had one of those days when you just don't want to get one more phone call about something not working out in the lives of someone that you love? When you just don't want to hear one more story about some political conflict, even if it's related in the pastoral tones of Noah Adams, or the sarcasm of Jon Stewart, or the wit of Rachel Maddow. We all face those moments when we'd rather just go back to bed, turn off the world, and retreat. So what do you do when the impossibilities are drowning the possibilities of life? The title of this sermon is A Small Good Thing, and it comes from one of my favorite short stories by Raymond Carver. And in this story, there is a baker, and he owns a small bake shop. He's just making it, just edging by. And he becomes incensed one day because there is a birthday cake that has been ordered and prepared, and yet is not picked up on time. The baker has already made his investment. He's already put his ingredients into the cake, and he becomes increasingly hostile as he thinks about this. Yet another person who has made it harder for him to do what he does. And so he leaves increasingly hostile phone messages about the forgotten cake on the answering machine of the parents of the boy who ordered it. What he does not know he does not know, is that the would-be birthday boy has been hit by a car and his parents are in the emergency room of the hospital attending him. The boy dies that night. And the parents go home and there's yet another message on their answering machine, and the mother, listening to the message, suddenly realizes what the noise in the background is, suddenly realizes who's calling. And she says to her husband, "We're going down there. Come with me." She gets him in the car and they go down to the bakery in the middle of the night and confront the baker, who is, of course, horrified by what he has done. These are Carver's words. "Please," the man said, "let me ask you if you can find it in your hearts to forgive me." And it's warm inside the bakery. Howard stands up from the table, he takes off his coat, he helps Anne from her coat. The baker looks at them for a minute and then nods and gets up from the table. He goes to the oven and he turns off some switches. He finds cups and pours coffee from an electric coffee maker. He puts a carton of cream on the table, a bowl of sugar. "You probably need something to eat," the baker says. I hope you'll eat some of my hot rolls. You have to eat and keep going. Eating is a small good thing in a time like this." He serves them warm cinnamon rolls just out of the oven, the icing still runny. He puts butter on the table and knives to spread the butter, and then he sits down at the table with them. And he waits. He waits until they each take a roll from the platter and begin to eat. "It's good to eat something," he says, watching them. "There's more. Eat up, eat all you want. There's all the rolls in the world here." They eat rolls. They drink coffee. The mother, Anne, is suddenly hungry. The rolls are warm and sweet. She eats 3 of them, which pleases the baker. Si se puede. It is possible. It can be done. Cesar Chavez used this phrase, and it was a rallying cry at the Justice General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist congregations last June. When the problems around us seem too big to handle, whether in our personal lives or in our collective and communal lives, when the solutions seem too inadequate and our own abilities puny and impotent in comparison, we need to find ways to look towards the possible. We might not be able to change our lives or the world with the speed or the skill that we wish, so we do what is possible, those small good things. We pay attention. We act from love. We claim our power. We forgive ourselves when we fall short. We make the invisible visible. It is possible to pay attention because when we don't pay attention, things happen when we're not looking. Right now, in the county just across the bridge, we have a sea change going on in the way that we provide services to the most vulnerable among us. There was an obscure law, AB 109, that was passed in 2011, and it was designed to address prison overcrowding in state prisons, and it did this by transferring lesser offenders into county facilities. And yet the deal that was struck, but for its implementation, allows counties to radically change the way that they serve a variety of people, including those receiving mental health services, those in the prison system, and those with substance abuse issues. And many fear that it will reverse progress that has been hard and long won on recognizing the particular needs of groups that are most endangered, including bisexual, gay, lesbian, and transgender individuals in those systems. It is, in fact, time to pay attention. It is possible to claim our power, which is the power of love in our heritage. You know, I have minister dreams. Minister dreams. I have personal dreams, of course, too, but I have minister dreams of things I dream of doing as a minister. And one of my minister dreams is that I might someday be able to perform a marriage service for a same-gender couple which confers with it not only the blessings of our faith, I've had the privilege of doing that, but which also would grant those scores and scores of legal rights that we too easily take for granted. I've never been able to do that. I almost was able to do that when we moved here 5 years ago, but I've never been able to do that. When we think about the world we want to create, we usually don't have the chance to do the big and dramatic things that we might be able to think of, but more often it's just the small things that are within our power. Finding a way to have a peaceful breakfast table in the morning. Reaching out to someone from whom you've been estranged, or making a single phone call to an elected representative, or choosing to boycott businesses that use their profits to support groups that spread hate instead of love. Small things. It is possible to forgive ourselves and each other and begin again in love, which is important since no person or the world is perfect, in case you hadn't noticed. And we're not too far away, not too many weeks away from the season of Yom Kippur, the Jewish holiday, which is about atoning for that which one has done so that one can begin again. It is a natural time of the year to think about what we might have done differently. To be like that baker, realizing that we have been part of creating division and enmity among people, even though that might never have been our intention. I think our tradition invites us to do whatever we can to help mend the torn fabric of the world. The reason we do things so badly is that we are not content to do what we can, activist and teacher Thomas Merton said. If we live for others, we will gradually discover that like everybody else, we have weaknesses and deficiencies, and that these limitations of ours play an important part in all of our lives. It's because of them, you see, that we need others, and others need us. It is possible to connect with one another and together be more than we could ever be alone. We do not exist for ourselves alone, Merton says, and it is only when we are fully convinced of this fact that we begin to love ourselves properly and thus also to love others. You know, in my ministry I get to watch again and again the way people do what they can. Getting up and coming out when they don't think they can face the world. Giving someone a ride to church who otherwise would have spent the weekend alone. Sharing a meal, as we will do in our congregation tomorrow, or a listening ear, or a room to stay for a while, or a grocery gift card. And in our justice work, we can do the same. We cannot single-handedly erase the great ignorance that allows people to see some as better and others as inferior, or address the results of those violations to human dignity and civil rights that we see in our policies all around us. All of those policies that treat some as less than in our society. We can speak out for schools instead of jails, call on those we elected to represent us, encourage one person who might not vote to do so, or have a dialogue with someone of a different faith that we do not understand. Small good things. Si se puede. One of the things we do when we do what we can is we make the invisible visible. And those are the words we were given last June by National Public Radio reporter Maria Hinojosa, whom I got to see work close up as part of a very small delegation which went inside the Maricopa County Jail Annex known as Tent City. It was a place that I have thought of this week as I reflect on forgiveness, or the lack of it in this world. On that evening, when we Unitarian Universalists came together to witness in Phoenix, outside that jail, I walked with that small group of people. We walked in through lines of armed men, past a tank, and many signs bragging about how many people had been served there, as if the prisoners were hamburgers counted on a 1970s McDonald's sign. We walked into barren, concrete yards which had scarred metal bunk beds, crammed under decades-old canvas flaps. They were barrack tents which reminded me of the ones that I'd seen in the pictures of the places where my Japanese-American relatives had been housed in their internment. And in fact, these tents are World War II surplus tents. Sheriff Joe Arpaio was our personal guide. He's the self-proclaimed king of this place. He uses the people around him as props in a way that I had never seen before. It was truly, truly evil to watch. He bragged about how he had stopped allowing the people there to receive letters, because you know that people like that simply use letters as a way to get drugs. He joked about how much money he had saved by keeping people, immigrants and citizens alike, in these conditions for over 2 decades. Now, our small group includes people such as Unitarian Universalist President Peter Morales and Susan Frederick Gray, our minister in Phoenix, and Bill Schultz, the head of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, Jeffrey Black, the head of the United Church of Christ, and Maria Hinojosa. They know what they're doing. They understand how to ask the right questions, the human rights questions. Are you fed? Yes, but the food sometimes has maggots in it. Do you get medical care? Yes, except that living here I've started to suffer from depression and anxiety, and they won't let me have those meds. Is it hot? Oh, and how. One guy snuck a thermometer in here, and last week he said it was 130 degrees one afternoon. Do you get water? Sometimes not for an hour or more after we ask for it, and that's in the afternoon when we've been working all day. I try to be present, even though it seems unreal that I'm in my country. I'm not there as an expert. I'm there as one human being, witnessing for other human beings, making the invisible visible. I look into the eyes of the people around us, and I listen, and as we are rushed through their yards, they pass out truths to me. They treat us like animals. Now, they treat us worse than animals. The animal shelter down the road, they have air conditioning. You know that they clean this place up for you, right? Like the bird shit and the rats. And then, someone catches my eye. Thank you for coming. I did something wrong. But what they're doing, it's wrong too. And then another man. No one knows we are here. We know, I said. We know, and we will not forget. The work of our faith is the rearranging of this world towards justice so that bounty is shared and no one is left out. So writes my colleague, the Reverend Nancy Brooks Schaefer, who died last spring. The work of our faith is making manifest of relationships so that the parts and whole are known as one and good is uncovered and sustained. The work of our faith is in naming the holy by its many names. Life that cares, life that enlarges, life that holds us even when we cannot see it, even when we do not yet know it, rearranging, making manifest, naming the holy. This is the work of our faith, and gladly we enter it again and again and again. We can, and I believe we must, do those small good things that we can do. And when I close, I'm going to invite us to sing at least one verse of This Little Light of Mine. And when I do, I'm going to invite you to picture what I will always picture when I sing that song for the rest of my life in memory. Thousands of Unitarian Universalists and local partners from the Arizona communities outside of that tent city, later on that evening, people filling a street, each person lifting up a single electric candle to the sky until thousands of lights shone picture across the way, a block away, the sight of the shadows of the prisoners jumping up to the windows so that they could see that we were there, so that they could see that we knew that they were there. Si se puede. It can be done. We can be part of that turning. From a small seed of hope, we can grow a powerful love. And we can do this in our own lives and in the lives of the world. If we pay attention, if we act from love, if we work together, if we do what we can, however little it may seem, and if we forgive ourselves when we fall short, if we vow not to forget, and if we always are willing to do that small good thing. And I will invite you just to rise and we'll sing one verse of this little light. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine.